right?
But the spirit is here. I'm all right. I'm all right until I go to the dentist and I saw the bill.
So it's still here lah. Okay, so everyone, I think we are live. So welcome to today's session. Welcome to Quick Connect Live. This is a place where we share, learn, and grow together as a community. And we meet fortnightly to discuss personal development topics ranging from psychometric tools to psychological methods to performance hacks. And it's hosted by me, Jeffeth, and Ethan. Ethan is not able to join us for today. And for today, we're covering the topic of exploring your reason for being, or the Japanese concept of ikigai. Right, so I'll be the host. We'll kind of rotate scribing today. We'll see how that works, and so that's what we are doing today. So maybe just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Alex. I help people to discover, decipher, and develop their talents into strengths so that they can maximize performance at work, improve relationships, and increase overall well-being. And of course, I represent Strengths Alchemy. We do coaching, training, and facilitation. Right. So I'll pass the time to Jeffeth to do a quick introduction.
Okay, I'm Jeffert. I help leaders to discover their own leadership impact, especially to help their own team members grow and navigate this uncertain VUCA world, right? Of course, then I do personal coaching, and of course, I train and facilitate leadership workshops as well, and help people to discover their well-being.
Awesome. So I think today's session, let's just go, it's a small group, right? So we just go through a little bit about what ikigai is. Then maybe we explore what ikigai is for ourselves and what kind of challenges we potentially face looking at it. So models are kind of very nice and useful when it puts concepts together. And then when you try to use it, you go like, oh, I can't find that intersection point, right? So what do we do about it? And that's what today's topic is about. So I'll like Faith, Mel, and Emily to introduce yourselves and maybe share a little bit about are you familiar with this ikigai concept, right? Or are you new to it? So we know how far and how deep to go, right? So let's start with Faith.
Yeah, hi, my name is Faith, and I am basically a product owner today in internet industry. Ikigai, yeah, I read about it off and on. The Venn chart is very familiar, but how to make it intersect, I think the application of it is harder. So yeah, hope to be able to refresh my memory and because I'm also as I was saying earlier, I was looking for a career switch, so this would probably help me in some way relation to that.
Okay, awesome, Faith. Pick the next person.
Emily?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Faith. So my name is Emily. I'm in the supply chain industry. And I'm familiar with Ikigai, so I've read the book and recommending the book to most people that I know of. Interestingly, I was also interviewed for a podcast about the book and how I kind of applied that to my life. But I think for today it would be interesting to just hear from you guys and how you see it and how you have also kind of seen your purpose or discovered your purpose through Ikigai.
Very interesting. So Emily, I'm going to tap on you a lot during today's session because very simply, I have not read the book. So you probably know.
Oh, you have not? Okay.
So, it's a concept that I've come across many times. And one of the things that I've seen is, well, as a strength coach, I think that our talent teams fits very well into the Ikigai if you to explore it. And that's one of the things that I really like about that overlap. So I don't want to go to that direction too quickly, but that is definitely an angle that we're going to explore, right? As a meetup group on strengths to talk about how does this fit together and how does it help us. Okay, let's have Mel.
Hi. The only thing I know about Ikigai is that it's the intersection of four things. So between what you love, what the world can pay you for, it.
Yeah.
What you can be paid for, what the world needs, and what you're good at. And yeah, for me, I haven't found that intersection between the four.
Yeah, it can be quite challenging.
Yeah, still searching.
Okay, thanks. Let's have Eileen. So Eileen, Eileen and Sofianti, right? So we are just doing an introduction of ourselves, and what do we know about ikigai, so we kind of know how deep we can go in for today's discussion. So Eileen, quick introduction, and are you familiar with ikigai?
Hi everyone, Eileen here. I'm a coach, HR facilitator, and portfolio career individual, or gig economy basically. Yeah, like Mel, I know it's the 4 circles, and the one I like is probably find out what I'm good at, and people will pay me for that.
Okay, that's interesting, right? Maybe we should talk about process, because part of it is also, I guess, either it's part of job search or it's part of entrepreneurship. And the other thing I thought is interesting, Eileen, you are also an author now, right? Your book is out?
Yes. It is out. We launched it. So if you can see, the book is here.
Oh, Into the Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks. We just launched it last week. Friday was the virtual global launch, and Saturday was the in-person launch for our Singapore-based friends.
You want to talk a little bit about what that book is?
Okay. So Into the Wild is basically a combination, it's a book that is used to promote creating coaching cultures in the workplace. And we've used a fable to talk about how that can be done. And at the end of the fable, you presented the framework that was being used to cultivate that coaching culture within the organization as described in the fable. And the fable is with animals. That's why it's called Into the Wild, right? The jungle and all that. But the wild is also the acronym for our framework.
Okay, very nice, very nice.
Yes.
So for those of you who are keen to find out more about creating coaching culture in organizations, if you're coaches, like I think Emily, you're a coach, right? Very cool. So we could explore that and see what we can pick from that. Okay, let's move to Sofianti. I'm not sure whether I got her name right.
Yes, you're right.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that's a short introductions, right? Okay. Yeah, I actually I've been with the HR industries for a very long time. Yeah, and so far the industry really interests me a lot. That's why the reason why I stay for very long time in this industry. And how does it relate to the ikigai?
HR?
That's what I would.
Which aspect of HR do you do?
We deal with more system implementations and post-implementation supports and I work in the HR outsourcing firm. So apart from setting up, providing hosting services to them, we also provide the payroll processing services and HR management as well, leave management and all sorts of things, stuff. So along the line, I still stick to this line to be all throughout.
Okay, so you're interested in finding your own ikigai, or you're interested in helping other people find their ikigai?
Find my own ikigai. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna start there first, right? And I'm going to just give a very quick overview of what my understanding of ikigai is and how I came about it. And then Emily, please come in and share the deeper insights of ikigai, as we talk about it, right? And if you can share your podcast so that people can listen in more about ikigai, I think that would be great as well. So let me just do a quick share of my Miro board. Okay, so this is the ikigai format. The most complete one I could find online. basically it's an intersection of four things, right? What you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. Now, my journey into Ikigai is also because I did career profiling. So I use this profile called the Strong Interest Inventory. And one of the things that people come to me and they often ask, like, oh, so how do I find a career or something that's most suitable for me? So one of the things that I often share with people, and I'll share them here, is that I look at three things, right? For people who are looking to find a career. Right? And these three things are, and you'll see some similarities to Ikigai later, right? Sorry, give me a sec. Okay, so the first thing that I share with people about what they should look for a career is this thing called passion, right? And when we need to find what we want to spend most of our time doing, we need to have that passion, what we love about it, right? The next thing that is very important when we find a career is this thing called competence. So basically, you need to be good at your job. If not, you get fired. And the last thing basically is money, right? So we in a career not for hobby. We are in it because we need to make a living. We need to support family, support your own expenses. And these were the three things. And how I usually share this information is this, right? Now, if we have passion and competence, but no money, what happens? Who would like to try? Anyone? Just shut it out. Come on, this discussion. What happens if you have passion and competence, you really love it, you're really good at it, but it doesn't pay you?
We will give up halfway.
Why?
Because money matters.
Okay, why does money matter?
To, like we say, to support our family or our own habits or whatever you call that. Yeah, not sustainable, right?
So what will happen is you will either become broke or realize that it's actually not sustainable, right? So this is what happens if we just look at this, right? What happens if you have passion and money but no competence?
Passion, money,
I love it so much, and it's such a high-paying career. Like,
passion.
I'll give you an example, right? One of my dreams I had a long time ago was I love to trade, like Forex. And I wanted to let me go and learn about Forex. I went to learn technical analysis. I went for workshops and I tried to apply for jobs for trading. Of course, no one came back to me because I have no background. But at the end of the day, even for my own trading with Forex, I didn't make a lot of money. I didn't lose too much, but didn't really make much as well. So firstly, of course, it's hard for me to find a job, right? But what's the other thing that would happen? Let's say I did find a job and I loved it and it paid me, but I had no confidence in it. What happens?
You lose your money.
You will lose your money. Why? How would you lose your money?
Well, I suppose you keep, because you are not competent, then you'll probably be making mistakes. Or you're probably going to pay a lot of tuition fee, I guess.
Wait, so that is if you are entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, kind of.
So if you're an entrepreneur, you probably lose your let me change that word to, you probably lose your capital.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're running your own business, you should lose your money. If you were hired, you probably lose your job at some point of time. So for those who are in HR, there's this wonderful thing, quote unquote, that people call performance management. You manage the performance, right? But that's what happens when someone isn't performing. Now, what happens if, there's this other thing that we fall into most of the time, right? Which is we're really good at it and people pay you for it. So I've known people who are like accountants, right? They're really good at accounting. They can do balance sheets and everything really, really well. There's a demand for it. People pay them for it. But you know how dry accounting can be for most people, and then they burn. Okay, I've just given you the answer. They burn out, right? Essentially, if you have no passion for it, you can get into it, but what will happen is you burn out. So this is kind of the model that I've been using, right? This three-way model of sharing with people whenever I do career coaching and career profiling with people. of what people look for in career. And then along the way, as we started to go, I learned about this thing called the ikigai, which is the Japanese model and concept, right, of how to find your reason for being. And actually, if you look at it, there is a kind of a quite big overlap, right, between the two models. Passion is kind of what you love. Competence is kind of what you're good at. Money is kind of what you get paid for. And one that I'm kind of missing was what the world needs. But I think if the world needs it and the world can pay you for, that's where your money comes from. So there's kind of an alignment between the two and the way I see it. So I use the model on the left a little bit more. Whenever I work with undergrads or people who are looking for career. And then, a lot of people come to me and then they say, hey, have you heard of this thing called ikigai? And that's where I started to look at ikigai and explore how it is. So that's how I came to ikigai, that's how I understand, and this is how I match how I approach the whole searching for a career thing to, I guess the next thing is, your reason for being. And that's what I have. I'm going to pass the time to Jeffers. Anything to add, based on your very highly honed input talent?
Highly input talent. Actually, okay lah. I guess I didn't come across ikigai from this manner. I came across more from the original Japanese concept, which actually means need to post something.
Okay.
Post something in a chat box, right? So yeah, it actually means that ikigai is a sense of being alive now and individual consciousness as a motive to live lah. So it's more like a state of being. And yeah, so that was how I originally came about lah, more from the mental and wellness space. And then later on, yeah lah, as Alex explained, I started to see the Venn diagram, which cuts into things that you love, things that can be paid for, what you're good at, and what it needs lah. So I guess, yeah, at this stage, nothing much to add. I think let's follow on with this conversation and see what people say about it.
How about Emily? How am I doing on the ikigai front?
No, I think I like how you kind of related to the career coaching conversation, because they are very much related, except that I think in the very heart of ikigai is purpose and meaning. So, it's not just about career, but it's also about happiness. So that whole connection on well-being. So I think just like what Jeff also mentioned, like, that notion that ikigai is also centered around well-being is actually the spirit of it. So in the book, you would notice that before they even arrived to the diagram, they were studying the centenarians in Japan. What made them live longer than others? Why did they survive more than 100 years? So the authors were very curious. What is that driving force? Where is that life coming from? And what's their secret? So it talked about their eating habits. It talked about their lifestyle. And then they discovered that if you connect all of these together, it's actually purpose, having that sense of purpose, waking up every day. And how did they arrive to their purpose? That's the model that they came up together. Yeah, so that's ikigai for me in a nutshell.
Okay, so it's about well-being and about purpose, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And a purpose is seen by things like what you love, what you're good at.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. I say it's interesting because I have a different model that we use to talk about life purpose. And it's based out of my faith, right? So as a Christian, I came across this model called the Christian Life Purpose Coaching Model by this guy called Tony Stoltzfus. And there are 7 elements to it, right? It starts with allegiance. He talks about design. So our design is, let me dig it up for you all later, right? If I can find it, I'll show you what there is. So we'll talk a little bit about another model for purpose as well. And I'm guessing that Miro Hero is Jeffers. Okay, so there's this kind of where we are. Hey, my question for everyone is, what do you find of the 4 things of ikigai are the most challenging thing to identify? Right. For me, I think what's really difficult for me to identify is the bottom 2, which is what the world needs and what I can be paid for. Actually, it's the other way around. I kind of know what I love and what I'm good at, but it's sometimes hard to figure out whether this is what the world needs and whether this is what the world will pay me for. And for me, that's kind of one of the larger challenges of finding my ikigai. What about the rest of you? Hi, Murphy. Welcome.
Hi. Yeah, I think I look at it from a different angle, because I think I'm actually very blessed, because for the last 18 years plus, I've actually been pursuing my passion. I actually turned my passion into a business. My passion is actually in helping people uncover their potential. Basically, I'm a coach. I help companies develop managers into leaders. And before this ikigai concept came out, I kind of like stumbled into all the 4 in a sense. So I guess in a way we can be guided, towards these 4 if we work on our life purpose enough. So, having gone through different phases of life, having gone through different challenges, one of the things that is really interesting to me is, what is life all about? I ask questions like, why do I wake up in the morning? Why do I eat? Why do I do this? Why do I do that? So out of curiosity and also out of my own needs, I guess, in addressing my own challenges, I consciously or unconsciously been answering these questions. And it's not a course that you can go through, say 4 days and voila, you get your answer. It's really a lot of iterations. It's a lot of reworking. It's a lot of refining. It's a lifelong process. So in that process, I have kind of discovered what I like to do. Because before that, I was actually very much into IT. I was actually an IT consultant during the first .com boom. That's when the Amazons and the eBays and the Yahoos started. Because I thought I liked computers, therefore, I actually went into that profession. It's not that I went into it out of accident. I kind of chose, to get into IT, but there is an underlying passion in me in really understanding why people go through what they go through, why certain people are more resilient, why certain people are not. So those kind of things kind of like interest me a lot, because I use my own life as a lab test, if you like.
Right.
And I try to use that concept on other people, So I started to understand myself, and I say, why didn't I have the problems that some of my friends had? So I was very intrigued. And then after that, I said, why certain people have certain strengths that I don't have? So that kind of helped me to understand what I'm good at, in relation to what I want to do. And also, it also helped me to know what I'm not good at, when I go through some challenges. Because if we look at our own life, it's kind of, it's a good guidance for us to know where our strengths and weaknesses lies, because the things that we enjoy doing or the things that we do better than people, chances are those are our strengths. And those areas where we struggle more than other people, chances are those are our weaknesses. So that what I'm good at is quite easy to discover if we explore enough, if we get exposed enough about life. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to go into uncharted waters, because that's really where the answers are. And because of knowing where I'm good at, it also helps me to validate what I love to do. So as I do more of those, people come back to me. It's like people say, look for Murphy. If you've got this, you should talk to Murphy. So I kind of like, okay, I think maybe that could be my business. So I found what the world needs in talking to people, in helping people to work out the issues. And then, when people come back to me and ask me more about, what I can do for them. So that helps me to know what the world needs. Now, to me, is not what the whole world needs, but it's really what the world needs in your own context. Because in what you do, you kind of like interact with kind of people that, will talk about the topic. So I started to do more of that, and eventually I get paid. People start paying me. I didn't ask for it. I didn't purposely, come up with a business model, to say, hey, pay me because I can do this for you. People pay me because they think I have helped them. They thought I had given them value in which they want to pay me. So I said, okay, now I think I'm able to get people to pay me. I do more of that, So because I do more of that, I know more of my strength. I'm able to discover more of what I'm good at. So I expanded my business. I expanded business from individual problems to organizational problems. So I started more on personal improvement areas, and then I went into corporate, and then I started to it's really like one thing lead to another. So really is when we go into this, we can only see a certain level, but the more we get into it, the more experience we have, the more exposures we have, the more different perspective we have. It kind of like expands our perspective. It expands the optics that we have. And really, if you look at it, when the passion and all this comes in, when all the interrelated parts comes in, we see different things. So sometimes we can even see, things that is not there, initially. So yeah, I think I'm really blessed in that sense.
Excellent. Thanks, Murphy. So I'm going to highlight one learning that I had from you. I thought it's an important point is that, look, when we start looking at a model, even for our careers, right, many people think it's a one-shot sniper thing, right? It's like, oh, let me discover, that's my key purpose, and I'll go into it, and that will be my end all be all forever and ever. It's not the case, right? Most of the time.
I mean, like I said, I've coached a lot of people from students all the way to CEO of big corporations. I think a lot of people are trying to find the answer. I want to know what I'm good at, or I want to know what's the answer to my problem. Everyone is trying to find one answer, which means it's like when you find one answer, you can move on. It's kind of like you tick the box and you can move on to something else. It doesn't work that way. Because that answer is only valid at that point in time. Because the moment we start evolving or even moving away, our situation changes. Now we can leave that solution behind. We cannot leave our life behind. Our life follows us, right? Because our life follows us, our life evolves. And that evolution requires us to always relook at this diagram and ask ourselves, is it still valid? Is it still relevant? Because then, especially, the other concept that I want to talk about, which may not be quite relevant here, is the comfort zone, right? Because the comfort zone expands, right? And once the comfort zone expands, we need different skills, to work with that comfort zone. And those different skills will then go back to what am I good at, right? What do I love to do, right? So then, so there's a lot of moving parts. Right? It's really like juggling, 10 hats together. And if you think you can juggle 10 hats, you got to juggle more. So there's a lot of moving parts, and these moving parts will always create new dynamics in relation to ikigai.
Exactly, right. So I think one of the things that many of us kind of stop ourselves is the thinking that there is one single perfect purpose or one single, and the moment we drop that and let that go, and evolve along the way, that actually helps us to eventually find what our real reason or purpose is.
Absolutely. So think about this, right? Think about this. Sometimes we work so much, to overcome a certain weakness. and we finally managed to overcome the weakness, and and that gives us a certain level of confidence, and we move on in our life, all right, thinking that that weakness has been fixed, right? And then we move on to other weaknesses or other parts of our life, and then suddenly that thing come back and haunt us again. And then there's a time when we say, I thought I fixed this weakness. How come it comes back and haunt me again? And this is exactly what we're talking about. It is always a moving part.
Yeah, and the reason I changed my virtual background is because we do this profile called Clifton Strengths, right? And I found that profile actually helps us to discover what we are good at, because it's about talent teams, and also in some ways what we love, because our talent teams and our strengths are what energizes us as we do them, right? So there is the element that we look at in strengths development quite a bit, but of course the mindset, right, which is what we're really talking about, that evolution, that iterative, that not being stuck. When we talk about growth mindset, right, rather than a fixed mindset, is that things change and evolve all the time. So I have one question for you, Murphy, which is very interesting, because my own journey when I was doing coaching and all this was this. I found it really, really hard to ask people to pay me. So it was very easy for people to come and like, oh, can you coach this youth, or non-profits can come and say, oh, can you support? So there's this whole piece. That's why I said money is important. But do you have problems like when you're doing coaching to like?
Yeah, I mean, even now, people will try to get some free advice here and there, and I'm more than happy to give free advice, but I'm always mindful to know my worth, and that's the first lesson that I've learned. Always know your worth and always express your worth. Otherwise, people will just keep asking and asking and asking. So what I do is, I'll probably give, let's say if you want, some help, I'll probably give you a certain amount of coaching. And then let's say if you want more, I say, okay, you know what, I think it's time for you to look for someone whom you are able, you're willing to pay. Right. I think your situation demands more professional, attention. So that's where I would suggest that you look for someone, to hire someone more professionally, more formally, so that you can get more, dedication. And usually there's a time where they will ask me, how much do I charge? Right, because they already know me, right? They already know me, and then and I've already given them some advice. So chances are they want to know, okay, So and here again, I'm more mindful about what impact do I have on that person, because a lot of times people want free advice, but I've learned enough to know that when it's free, it is not valued. Right, free training, free this, free that is not valued. So I want to establish, when it comes to a paying mode, what is your attitude towards something that is paid? Because you tell me that you're not interested, to have that, then I know that you're not serious in wanting to find a solution. Then I think it's better for us to stop there.
Excellent. Thanks, Murphy. So those were some of the learnings or insights that I'm getting, as well as I wanted to highlight some of the things I'm hearing, right, for everyone, those online as well as those who are watching the recordings in future. So how about the rest? Do you all have any comments or questions with regards to your own experience with Ikigai?
Maybe I'll share. I think it's like what Murphy says, a discovery process. So it's more like on hindsight, then when you reflect back onto this Ikigai model, then you have some new realization. But actually a lot of things are moving. Even your targets are moving, right? The goals that you set changes over time. New relationships, right? Like, so I've kids, right? I have 2 kids, and it's coming, right? So all that changed my priorities in a flash, right? So there's a lot of things I have to rebalance myself in my career, also in my relationship, and also spiritually, right? My relationship with God. So there's a lot of things to balance out and really going back to the root, and that also affects, right, the career that I choose, right? Financial stability, my values also change as a result of that. So that also changes the way I see my own meaning and my own purpose in life, lah. So I guess then, so I really couch more the idea that it's not like that one shot thing, like what you mentioned, but it's really a discovery process. And also want to mention that not every time is smooth sailing, lah. Not every time you have the highs and everything like, oh, you follow the plan means everything will turn out well. And there are a lot of moments that you will fall quite hard as well. And it's during those moments, what do you make of it, lah? Whether there are people around you to help you make sense of it, to help you unpack things as well, that matters. And that's life, right? If you look from a bigger scheme of things, that's how life evolves. It's never a straight line. It's always moving all over the place, but eventually you're progressing somewhere.
Yep.
So I think, yeah.
Yeah. So Jeff, I think one of the things that you mentioned was in my mind as well, right? Was values. And I realized that the ikigai thing, when we talk about love, good at, needs, and paid for, that doesn't seem to address this thing called values, right? Which somehow I think if we are on the topic of purpose, values plays well, at least to me, right, plays a very big part.
But values can be seen in terms of mission, isn't it so?
I think it's a bit different, right? Because in the ikigai model, when you talk about the mission here, is intersection between what you love and what the world needs, right? So if you love doing something that the world needs, regardless of whether you're good at it or not, or whether you get paid for, and under this framework, they call it mission, right? So I'm just wondering, maybe Emily, you can chime in a little bit. When we talk about ikigai in the book and things like that, did we address values?
No, I don't remember that they talk about values, but what they were describing is the external. So that's why you see in the Venn diagram, it talks about, what the world needs, what will you be paid for, what do you love. So it's a external kind of manifestation. But the inward look of what's the deeply seated values, that's not addressed by the book. But I think it could be used. So this model can be used with another value-based model, I think, because when you kind of go through the reflection process, so for example, when you ask yourself, what do you really love? Then, you go through a kind of almost like a why analysis for yourself. And then you will touch upon your values.
Yeah.
So if you really want to, be intentional about this, you also need to look at yourself. You need to go back to, what is also shaping those values. And then the outward manifestation of that is what we see from this Venn diagram.
Yeah. Actually, I agree with Emily, because like the values is like a snapshot, right? Whenever we do at this moment in time, but values do shift also over a long period of time. Now, the main values like love, family usually don't change, but how we define it change. And often if we don't reflect enough, we don't see actually it is changing. And like, I like what Murphy has a lot of reflective inquiry during his life. And through those reflection, or maybe we bounce off a quote, right, is where you get that insight. Like, actually, I've shifted from what I really value in the beginning, but I didn't realize it. Because things happen, events happen, right? So the way you attribute meaning also change, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we also not aware of how we see certain things, right? So like, Jeff, we had a conversation once about, did you prefer working with people or do you prefer working with tasks or things? And so we because I'm certified with Lego Serious Play, right? So we kind of did some modeling in terms of what he found most satisfying in different stages of his life. And the interesting thing is everything that he built had lots and lots and lots of people in it. I was like, okay, so explain to me, why there's so many people, but you tell me that you prefer to work with things and people. So I think a lot of times there are things that are subconscious to us and we may not be aware of it. And one of the ways that we can get aware is either like get a coach or maybe get someone who is close to you, a close friend, family, and have them tell you, what are some of the things that they see you're really passionate about, that you have a lot of energy doing. And that could be a very useful exercise for people as well.
Yeah. So just to share, so how I've done my ikigai, or at least attempting to write what my ikigai is, I have to go back to photos.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, if you allow me, Alex, I can just briefly share that I have it ready on my
Sure,
screen.
no problem. I'm gonna make you co-host and you can share your screen. So let me stop sharing.
Okay, hang on. Let me just share with you my process.
Oh,
Can you see my
nice.
screen?
Nice.
So I
It's,
think just like most of us, you know, when you are presented with this framework, you don't necessarily know where to start. So I did ask myself, if I kind of detangle all the four circles, right? What would it look like? But it's not an easy exercise, at least for me. But I did it anyway. So you would see the okay. So you would see the outcome already. So this is just the nice separate bubbles. But how I arrived to this is really going back to memories. Okay. And you know, by going back to memories and what you really value, and what makes you happy, then it makes it clearer for me, at least, what I'm writing. So for example, in my case, I really love my family. I love to be with people. I love children. I love to impact the youth. And you know, I love art. I love to travel. So when I look at that and how I relate that to my ikigai, it will look like this. So there's an element of art, music, nature. There's something about children. There's something about teaching, organizing things. And I know that I can be paid for what I do today. So I'm in the supply chain management type of work. I also know I can teach and I can coach and would love to be an entrepreneur someday. So I'm sharing this because the process is not straightforward. You have to go back to what are the deeply seated values, what are the memories that supports them, and they might evolve. So for example, one of the things I'm finding when I'm coaching, especially those fresh in, you know, fresh from university, the life stage is different, right? So the thinking is also more about just getting a job. And you know, like Alex, to your first model, that's very much resonating in that type of conversation, so that works very well. But when you talk to someone who's like mid-career or even in a crossroad and finding that, okay, I get the money but I don't feel like, you know, I'm finding purpose. So to your model, Alex, the burnt out feeling is there. Then you start asking yourself, what is good for me, what makes me happy. And then that could be a different life stage, and at this point you start to think about family. You start to think about what are your hobbies, what do you really love doing that you're not able to do. And then you start asking yourself, okay, uh, you know, what is it really that I'm passionate about. And you may not discover it right the first time. So there's a lot of trial and error. So it's a journey. It's never right the first time. But I think what is working for me is to be fully aware of where I am in my life stage as well.
Yep.
Because if you ask me this Venn diagram 10 years ago, it probably would have a different outcome versus, you know, where I am now. So that there is that consideration too. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, right? A lot of us, I guess because of our education system, we go into the whole, oh, let me train for whatever the government is saying is a future job. So during my time, computer engineering was all the rage, right? Technology. So everybody wanted to go into computer engineering. And then after that, we have oversupply of computer engineers, and banking was all the rage, and all the money was in banking. So everybody wanted to go into banking, and we kind of like move with whatever the trend is, right? And oftentimes without consideration for what really drives us or what makes us passionate. So a couple of things I thought might be useful, and tell me whether you think it is. One is I like the whole strengths thing. So for example, right, if I look at what I love and what I'm good at, if I look at empathy, so I love when I can connect with people emotionally, right, and know what they're feeling, right? I'm probably good at sensing what people are feeling, right? Therefore, coaching and facilitation is a great thing for me to do. I love coaching, I love engaging with youths. Thinking about demographics that we want to impact could be a useful way, right? So like Emily, you mentioned, oh, I love working with youth and kids. So I like working with youth too. I like playing with kids, which is kind of different. So once I get clear about the demographics I want to impact and why, that's also very useful for me. A lot of people have a heart for elderly folks. My heart is for the youth. It's quite different, and also because language barrier, right? I can't quite speak the dialect and can't connect with them as well. So the demographics is a useful thing. The other thing, because I'm heavy on the whole emotive part, right? And there's this whole idea of not emotional intelligence, but intelligence of emotions. That is, your emotions actually communicate and tell you something. So one of the things I thought is useful when we start talking about things that we are passionate about or things that we love is look at the reverse, which is, okay, think of something that makes you really, really angry when you hear about it. Right? You get an emotional response. That probably tells you that you have a passion in that area. Right? So for example, you know, when I can't remember, I think there was a talk of adoption and young kids being abandoned and things like that, and that got me quite upset and quite angry. I was like, okay, maybe that's an area we can go into, right? How do we help the poorer countries in terms of dealing with them? So I even had, okay, so don't quote me. I even had the idea of like, oh, what if I've maybe try to be a foster parent or adopt a kid or something, right? So those are some of the things. I probably won't get paid for it unless I want to run a foster home or something, right? But those are all points that we can start thinking of. What makes us really, really angry when we hear about it is probably one way to identify passion. The other thing that I thought is interesting is what you're good and what you love, right? The opposite is what you hate, right? So if you think about things that you really hate in the world, that things that really trigger you, it will help you to kind of explore things that you're passionate about and things that you love as well. So that's one of the tricks that I do with myself and with other people is, well, if you can't tell me what they really like, tell me what you really hate, right? And then we start off from there as a starting point we can explore. And that's one of the tricks. What do you think?
Alex, I want to talk about what you've just mentioned. You know, when you recounted that you got angry, you know, about what really happened was it actually affected your values.
Yes.
Anything that makes us angry or happy or that really affects us emotionally. Chances are it has actually touched our values, whether positively or negatively.
Right.
So what happened is we are always guided by our values, our decisions, our thinking, our direction has a lot to do with how the world appears in front of us in relation to our values. We may or may not realize it, what our values are. The values can actually be operating under your radar. That means it's actually it's affecting us unconsciously. But the way to look at it, the way to clarify what our values are is what makes you angry, what makes you excited, what makes you determined, what makes you sad, right? Because it doesn't happen just like that, right? You don't get angry because it's good to be angry, because it was triggered. When we are passionate about something, it's triggered. Chances are it's actually triggered by our value systems. So we were talking about values just now, how value is in relation to ikigai. So the value here is like the autopilot programming.
Right.
that helps us clarify the things that we want to clarify in ikigai.
Right. And oftentimes it's subconscious, right? So we don't really know about it.
Yeah, a lot of times it's subconscious until we want to make the effort to make it conscious. Because if we think about it, as we grow up, as we learn about things around our family, as we grow up and we learn things about things that we get exposed to, our value systems are actually being is actually guiding us along the way, right? Across the different phases of our lives, our value system is actually guiding us. So the value system is there to help us support, our identity. Yeah.
And the reason I brought it up also is that, a lot of times when we do coaching, we start asking these questions and people do not know where to start, right? So when we ask them, tell me about what you love. I don't know, right? And we hear that many times as coaches. So the question is for everyone else, right? If we are starting and you do not know where to start off with things and circumstances that actually got you emotionally wired. Like I love the list that Murphy just put, right? Things that make you angry, happy, excited, determined, right? And from there, start thinking about, so what are those values? And from there, you can identify what you love, what you're passionate about.
So very interesting. The little things I always get people to do in a facilitation is sad, mad, glad, right? The reason being, like, I know that people are very caught up with work, so that cognitively people are very good at doing tasks, but often they don't connect to the emotions. So even a simple activity, a group activity like sad, mad, glad, allows people just to express that, whether it's unpenned emotions or certain things they're reacting. You can actually hear a lot about the values based on that lah. The other one I wanted to build on the values thing is I don't know, there was something that I thought about is about clarifying what you stand for, because that's something that you sort of realize over time, that something you stand for something, and that is something that makes you, I don't know whether it's related to boundaries, Alex, that could be, right? Like what you're willing to allow and what you're not willing to allow, and what do you really stand for. And that's where you get a lot of clarity, and I guess that makes you go towards a place where you know where you want to hit, which is different from where you were.
How do you clarify what you stand for? How do you think through that?
Yeah, so I think it's a mix, right? So values is only a snapshot that brought you, yes, it brought you over, but you need your lived experience to see how they are being played out, how you showed up, how your values showed up. And I don't know. So for example, mine was a very interesting choice, but it was also from a career development track. Right? So I started out in A-Star, right, as a cancer biologist. It started out because when I was young, my younger brother had Down syndrome, and I wanted to treat a cure for cancer, and that's where I was there. And realized that was not what I really wanted. Then I went to GSK, which I met Eileen over there, and I went to Environmental Health and Safety. But I was fascinated by the whole resilience and well-being space, right? I often gravitate to that without me knowing why I want to work there, rather than work on like fire safety, manufacturing side.
And
right?
you totally burnt out with the fire safety part.
Yeah, it burned me out lah. So then I went on to a couple of different careers later on, but I never stopped hovering around the topic around resilience and well-being. But at that point in time, I really know where I'm inclined to contribute lah, and where is my passion area. You call it my own discovery process, but that's how I discover lah. Not through what I want, but actually through all the what I don't want, which is pretty common for a lot of people who bummer, right? They bump around different places.
Okay, so speaking of this, is also another thing that's very interesting, right? So I was coaching this lady, and she came to me for career advice. And one thing I realized about her is that every choice that she picked for her career was the polar opposite of what she didn't like in the previous one. So she was like a ping pong ball, It's like, I hated this, therefore I wanted to do the total opposite. I went the opposite of that. I did this, I hated this thing about this, my second job, and went the total opposite of that. And I was like, okay, so that's like ping ponging, right? So what do you really want? And she wasn't really clear. And we then had a different conversation of, how do we explore what you really want so that she had some direction. So one of the things I found, and in NLP we call this the propulsion system, right, for motivation. When we have things that we really don't like and really, really hate, it generates a lot of energy and momentum. It pushes us really, really quickly. It's like the explosive power of the bottom of the rocket, right? Where the fire is. What you don't like, however, while it propels you very strongly, doesn't give you a lot of direction, except away from, right? So the other thing that's very, very important, as we started off talking about things that we don't like, things that we hate, angry, is to also use that to start guiding us to, okay, so what do we want instead? And in NLP, we call this well-formed outcomes, right? It must be stated in the positive, must be sensory-based, must be observable and things like that. So those are useful things to start thinking about. We need both the things that we really hate and really don't like that propels us, and the things that we want, which gives us that direction of, well, I really hate this, it makes me want to move, push factor. We need to know where we want to go towards as well. And I think both are really important, right? When we talk about how do we explore and what the purpose is. That being said, if we really do not know anything, like I tell many youths, right? If we have had some sufficient life experience, right? We gather enough and with enough reference points, we kind of know. But when we talk to people who, maybe just entering army or just got out of army, it's really, really difficult. So the direction that I usually give them is go and explore all the different things. Even if you think you might not like it or whatever, just go and try. Because the more you try, the more you might discover new things about yourself, right? I don't think that advice is not applicable for people who are older. It's just that, if you have explored quite a bit in your life, then you want to at some point of time start to converge rather than diverge, right? So when you're younger, you can diverge more, and then when you're older, you start to converge more, and that's kind of the process, right? Okay, I want to hear a little bit from those who've been quite quiet. We have Tan. Sorry, hi Tan. Are you with us?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hi.
Come share with us. What are your thoughts about what you're hearing so far?
Yeah, I think it's very good, great sharing from all of you. And because I'm also trying to be a coach, I actually quit my job already. So as in for me, all this is about you have to know yourself first. Self-discovery is very important. Yeah.
Mhm.
So once you know yourself, you'll be able to go around the rest of the things. And for me, astrology and the mental physics part actually help me to guide me towards where I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks for sharing. So what are you doing now, Tan?
I'm actually preparing a few things. Other than coaching, I'm also doing writing.
Okay. So if you want to publish a book, please find Eileen. She has published a book and she will tell you.
Yeah, something like that. Then
Yeah.
and also doing coaching.
Okay.
Yeah, because like what y'all say is like you don't only have one purpose. Usually, everyone have a few strengths. So, yeah, just diversify. Like I think that everyone should have around 1 to 3 strengths, the main strength, so you can make use of all these to how to say expand your streams of income rather than just focusing on one. Yeah.
Yep. And of course, one of the things is managing our energy, right?
Yeah.
When we try to do many things at the same time and we get pulled in different direction, we find that it's a little, at least for me, right? Because focus is my top 10, it gets a little bit challenging to do multiple things at the same time. I need to somehow dovetail sometimes.
Yeah, but because I don't think that for as in coaching and writing is not so popular. So I try not to just rely on one to get the incomes, because I'm not sure how stable is it yet. Yeah.
Interesting, right? What Murphy was sharing about his own journey into how he found his own space, and how he got into it by putting himself out in the world and creating value for people, which is meeting a need, and eventually people want to start paying him for it. So there's a process of also moving towards being a coach.
Yeah, I like to respond to Tan, that you are going into coaching now. I think Alex, you also mentioned this earlier. A lot of us, okay, we know all these processes, of discovering our purpose and all this, but the reality is that we always will be asking the question, how can I make a living out of this? This is a very, very compelling question. We can have all this, and we can have a lot of,
sorry, Murphy, your audio is
read a lot of books, and we can go through a lot of this process. Yeah. So every day when we try to do this, and the money is not coming in, the question mark becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And this is where I think it's very, very important for us to really trust and have faith, in our passion. The question I always ask people, and this is a question I also like to pose, to this audience, is what are the things that you're willing to do regardless whether you get paid or not? That means, every morning when you wake up, you just want to do it. You don't care whether you get paid or not. Because if you're able to discover that, then you are not worried about whether you get paid or not. And this is the irony. When you do enough of that passion, when you do enough of that interest, and when you show the world enough of what you're doing, because it is your passion, right? It is your passion because and you want to keep improving it. Because the more you do, the more experience you have, the better you become. And when you show the world how you have transformed, by doing that, someone will actually start to realize the value that you're actually creating. And in today's world, where you have the technology platform, you can show your work to the world in any parts. Somehow, there will be people who says, okay, I think I'm willing to pay. I've actually done an experiment. I actually, when I was starting out, I wanted to know which specific area that I want to make money from. So one of the things that I did was I actually posted different aspects of what I do in different talent marketplace, right? And I want to know what do people respond to different profiles of me in those different talent marketplace. And based on the response, I started to offer more of what they want. And because of that, I understand, what are certain things that I can make money from? What are certain things that people are not willing to pay? But one thing that I know I didn't change is I will never change my passion. All right, whether I get paid or not, I will never change my passion because that's exactly what I want to do. And of course, because the amount of work that I put in, the amount of shout outs that I have actually created to my own network, I started to establish credibility and all these things, and that's how, you get people to trust more in your work, and that's where you get paid. So have faith, in your passion. That's very important.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Murphy. And Tan, it's sometimes like what Murphy says, a leap of faith, right? And you just need to. Well, there are two ways, right? One is get your feet wet. The other way is dive in. So pick one and try.
Yeah.
I just want to respond to that because Alex, if you remember your very first question, which among the circles are you finding it difficult?
Yeah.
I think most people that I talk to, they're having a hard time, not only about the sense of mission, but also passion. What am I really passionate about? And it's not an easy question to answer because there are also many interpretations of what your passion is.
Yep.
Like sometimes people relate passion as something that is a hobby,
Mm.
you know, or sometimes passion can be something that they are validated, so you get the most reward. Or sometimes passion can be something that in the here and now I just love it, but then over time it is not the same, or it's gone. So different people have a different take of what their passion is. But as I reflected on this for myself, again, I always go back to what is consistent about my life,
Mm.
and start to go down to again the the memories and the events and specific examples where I know I could just wake up in the morning, and to what Murphy said, regardless if I get paid or not, I will do it anyway, right?
Mm.
And these moments can be consistent. These moments can be not consistent. They may not exist yet, but we have to take notice. So the level of awareness has to be high. Otherwise, if you ask yourself this question, you could be drawn to too many directions, or different directions, depending on how you understand what passion is. And for most people I talk to, they always equate passion as hobby. And hobby can change as well.
Mm.
But I think passion is much more than that. It's really deeply rooted, almost touching again to values also, if we relate it. But I just want to call that out because that's also one of the difficult circles to figure out.
So Emily, I have a follow-up question, which is like, I mean, then because what is consistent in my life, then you must have met different people from different life experience and different ages.
Yeah.
And how would that question pose differently for different groups? Because I would suppose those who had a bit more life experience might be able
Yes.
to reflect much more to see what is consistent. But what
Yeah.
about youth, right? You mentioned youth who
Yeah.
did not accumulate that. How would
Exactly.
yeah.
Perfect. And that's why I mentioned my earlier point about life stage. If you remember, when you reflect on this model, it depends on which life stage you are as well.
Mm.
Now, if you read the book, the people they interviewed are centenarians. So these are people who've really seen a lot in life.
Yep.
Those who are age 100 and above. So that means that their life is a summary of so many life experiences already. Now, if you compare that with someone who just graduated from university, right, there is a big hole to fill. To arrive to your sense of mission, to arrive to what your passion is, it also has experience to come with it. Japet, I don't know if I answered the question, but that's just my view.
Yeah, I mean, I was just reflecting also on Alex's point, like how would you advise a youth? And we did cover a couple of points because they haven't accumulated some of this experience yet. And then is it the guiding lessons for them is to go out and explore, but pay attention to that, right? Pay attention to that central question, which is what's consistent as you go about and acquire some of this experience. So I wonder whether that's something that that
normally how I do it is I zoom in on the micro experience. It may not be the big experience, but what's consistently in the moment that you really feel energized. So for example, there could be people where they really are just energized by helping, right? Helping in any way they can, helping their neighborhood, helping the elderly. So the key word is help or helping, right? The verb. Then in what ways or forms can that be kind of put into purpose or good purpose? Is there something that you're really good at, but you can also help others?
Mm.
Is there a need for for this in your neighborhood, in your community, in your church, or in your parish? So yeah, it's just noticing all these.
Mm.
And I think even as early as, I would say, 15, 16 years old, you would already notice all these things. It may not be the big moments in life yet, but definitely there are some micro moments.
Yeah, it reminds me of I think in some Chinese culture, I'm not sure they do it in other cultures as well, right? When the kid is like, I think 1 year old, you place several things in front of the baby for them to choose. So you have a toy, a calculator, a camera, couple of other things, right? And then you see which one the baby crawls up to pick. It's a kind of a funny thing that we do even with babies. But I think as they start growing older, I think that's one of the reasons why I highly encourage people to. I think in MOE now we have CCAs now, right? During our time it was called ECAs, extracurricular activities, and now it's changed. Now it's core curricular activities, whereby they either join a uniform group or they do something else. I think that those are actually excellent data points for youth, right? To explore what they love or what they hate in what they're good at, and it's great points for exploration for them as well.
Yeah, I also want to just touch upon just briefly, Alex, you mentioned this was most difficult for you, like what the world needs. I also agree. And the reason why it's difficult is because you have to be able to relate to it. So the world needs a lot today. There's a laundry list for that. But so what? Yeah, so what to you? What does it matter? Like, why does it matter to you? So you have to be able to relate it to you. And sometimes, people are so caught up with earning money. Sometimes we're so caught up with our own world that we don't see the world outside of us. So relating ourselves to the outside becomes difficult because there's a disconnection. Sometimes we don't really feel connected. And this is a challenge because if you're caught up with your own worries, too caught up with your own problems, too caught up with your own needs, then you don't get the sense of the bigger world. And I think the more we kind of create that awareness for our children, for the youth, the better world we will become. Because it's not only about the self, it's about the collective community. And that's what Ikigai is also about. So again, if you read the book, these centenarians are very close knit. They are best friends. They are the same neighborhood. They support each other. They're aware of what everybody needs, even if they don't ask, because they think about them, not they think about people outside of them, not only about themselves. So that awareness is key, and if that's missing, it is hard to reflect on this.
And it's very interesting because if we go into the cultures of countries, right? There's this concept of collectivism versus individualism. So the Japanese are very, collectivism kind of a culture compared to, say, if you're looking at maybe the US, right, which are a lot more individualistic or individualism kind of a culture. So I guess there's a little bit of slant because of the original research stemming from Japan. But if you start talking about the collective community in some other cultures, it may not resonate as much.
Yeah.
And
I think it's also less on now. I mean, if I'm looking at the current operating context, there's more towards collective problem solving. I mean, not talking about collectivism or individualism, right? But there's a need, because the problem now is becoming more complex in general. So the nature of how we solve the problems also become less of silo working on its own, but actually working together as a, I mean, not only as, if you look at it, it's not only as organization across organizations, not across government as well. Just like how has COVID changed how it has shaped our whole landscape, right? Only in Singapore as well as the countries that's working around us, right?
Yeah.
So it's no longer just Singapore working against, but it's more with and it's a moving target.
Mm. Okay, I'm thinking all the time, and we've kind of like 8 minutes to go. So maybe I'll just share a little bit, and then we'll go around and have everybody to share about what your biggest takeaway are, right? So maybe just follow up to Emily's question. I think for me, one of the challenges I have with Ikigai is sometimes I know what I love and what I'm good at, and I think what the world needs, but I don't believe I can be paid for it. And so there's a space where volunteerism becomes very important, right? So sometimes we go on mission trips with the church, or community trips to other countries, whereby we build water filters, water tanks for villages that need it. Some people go and they teach for a certain period of time, or they build schools and things like that. So there's a part of me that sometimes find it challenging to say, oh, I kind of love this, I think the world needs this, but I just don't believe that that's something that I can get paid for, right? So that there is sometimes a challenge in finding that overlap for me, and that's why we need to explore and iterate and build something at some point of time. Okay, so that's where we are. So today we could cover quite a bit of ground in terms of where we started. And we started off talking about the 3 things as we started to do the career coaching for people, right? The 3 aspects and how do we find, and we related back to ikigai and what that was about, right? And Jeffer shared what ikigai means, and Emily came in and shared a little bit more about what is it really about, purpose, meaning, well-being, and of course later community, collective community, and the research based out of the people who have lived 100 years or more, right? So how they live longer, what their eating habits, so and so forth, and then we came up with this model. We explored a lot about it being an iterative thing, and there's a discovery process whereby we need to constantly review, and the reason why it changes is because our life evolves, right? So different life stages, having that mindset of a single point is really, really negative. Our comfort zone expands as we grow, and also, well, our values does change, as we encounter different things. Finding what the world needs, one of the things useful is like what Murphy shared, right? Talk to people, right? The more you talk to people, more you discover what the world needs. And it's really not the whole world, but just in your own context, right? The people around you, community, what does it need? Try to find out more about that. And people will start paying for you as you start to do more and be at what you are good at. And one thing I do like what Murphy said is that always know your worth, right? So you have passion in it, do it, know your worth, and expect to get paid for it, right? And there's this whole process, right, of how do you get better and get better is to, well, is it something that you do regardless of whether you get paid? Do more of it, you gain more experience, you get better, and then eventually you start to find people who value what you provide and be willing to pay you for it. So we had a lot of conversations on values as well, right? So the values impact ikigai. We talk about how do we identify what some of these values are by looking at what do we stand for and looking at what are the emotions that trigger us. And I kind of like the 3 things that Jeffer said, right? Mad, sad, mad, and glad, right? If we explore these 3 emotions, might help you to have a great starting point. So we kind of covered quite a bit of this in the past 1 hour and 15-20 minutes, right? So now I'd like to pass the time to each and every one of you to let you share what your biggest takeaway from today's conversation is. And I'd like to start with, let me go in reverse order. Let's start with Tan.
Biggest takeaway. I think I learned a lot today. But biggest takeaway, I think what Murphy says, to have faith. Yeah, you really need to believe that what you are doing is in the right path. Yeah.
So faith in your passion, right?
Yeah.
That's what Murphy was talking about.
Believe in yourself. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Tan. Val, been really quiet.
Yes, I've been really quiet because I'm half working while attending this. My biggest takeaway, okay, I'll admit it, passion is something that I find it very hard to identify. If someone is, if anyone here is familiar with the Clifton Strengths knowledge, Maximizer is pretty high on my list. So I know my strengths very, very well since I was a child. So I naturally gear towards subjects that I do well at, and I just chuck the rest aside. Yes, so let's say I don't like art, I'll just flunk it and I can't be bothered about it. Yes, so that is my temperament towards life. But now that I've moved on to the working world, it can be rather hard to identify what I'm passionate about, especially when I was moving towards, let's say, my university degree. I kind of knew that I like it, but the nature of the job itself, because of capitalism and everything, the whole burnout kind of sinks in, and sometimes I question whether this is really my passion. Yeah. So what's Jeffers mentioned just now, sad, mad, and glad would be my greatest takeaway, because that is where my values lie. So I think that is a very useful point for me to uncover my passion, or rather maybe rediscover my passion.
Val, I already know what your passion is.
Clifton Strengths?
No, Harry Potter.
All right. Well, that is where ikigai comes in, and it doesn't pay me. Not in Singapore, unfortunately. I mean, I can go to Universal Studios Orlando, but how much are they going to pay me there, right? Yeah, so.
So there's this whole element of the lifestyle that we want as well, right? Because
correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Val. Murphy.
Yeah. My biggest takeaway is actually to know that there is such a group, here talking about ikigai, and it's really very enlightening, to listen to everyone here, your own perspective, your own experience. Now, I want to offer 2 additional keywords for all of us to take away. If we want to know more about ourselves, whether it's our passion or whatever, first thing that the first word I want to offer is observe more. Right? Observe more about yourself, observe more about your surrounding, observe more about your experience, observe more about your interaction, observe more about your emotions, because the observation will actually give you a lot of understanding. And that leads to the second word that I want to offer is awareness, right? Be aware of, I think, you spoke a lot about NLP, and one of the things that we talk about NLP is observe our subtle changes in emotions, all right? Because that emotion is triggered by something. It could be triggered by our values. It could be triggered by our beliefs. It could be triggered by something. So there's a lot of value information around us that we are not picking up. Now, in relation to finding passion, like I said, the question you have to ask yourself is, what is the thing that you like to keep doing even though you don't get paid? Yeah, that's awesome.
Excellent. Thanks, Murphy. So in our group, we do talk about all sorts of things, from profiling tools to ikigai and all this, right? So do come join us, and we will explore different topics. I love your input.
Thank you.
Thanks. Eileen, you're next.
I came across ikigai, but I never had the opportunity to talk with people around it. So it is quite enriching to hear Murphy. Quite envious of him to have evolved and reached that stage, right?
You'll be there too one day.
Yeah. So I think, like yourself, Alex, I really find the challenge between knowing what the world needs and whether they'll pay me for it, right? So like in a way, like Tan, I'm also just pretty new, I mean, 2 years into full-time coaching. And to Murphy's point, right? I mean, you do it when people want to come to you for free coaching, free advice, and free guidance, blah blah blah. But then they say, really, I don't mind. I think what you're doing is good. You should be paid. But when you tell them how much you think you want to be paid, they're like, okay, I can't afford it. So that's the part where being an entrepreneur, the how you get paid is an important factor. Because if you have a corporate work and then you're still trying to figure out all these things, it's fine because you have something to fall back on. So yeah, so I think
you have to feel the worth. You see that this is the thing, right?
Yeah.
Deep down in us, subconsciously, we don't feel the worth. You have to feel the worth. It's just like a tip of the iceberg. The day that people start paying you is the tip. But before the tip arises, the bottom part that is submerged under the sea, there's a lot of work we need to work on ourselves, right? Even for me, I mean, I didn't get paid on first day. I have to work a lot and I have to go out a lot, and I have to sacrifice a lot. It's a process, right? But at the end of the day, you need to build the sense of deservedness that you are worth it. That's the most important thing. I don't know how long it takes. To some people, maybe 1 month. To some people, maybe years, right? But if we work on it, eventually, again, this is where faith comes in, because I know a lot of people, my peers have given up, along the way. So yeah, that's how it is. We just have to work at it.
Yeah. So to your point, I'm still on the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we can do is we can have a community that supports us, right? So even when I was doing this at Jeffer, at Ethan, have the friends from Strengths Asia who go like, hey, you can do this, you can support each other. So that whole support system, right, is also very important in helping encourage us to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Eileen. Emily, your biggest takeaway for today? Sorry, getting a lot of feedback. Emily, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm really just grateful for this community as well. I mean, I really appreciate how that Miro board has evolved. And actually, Alex, I want to ask you: is that okay to share the output of this conversation?
Yes.
Because it created more depth than the book.
That's interesting.
And that's from me who's read the book and done the exercise. But when we really kind of talk about it and put layers to it, compare, contrast, it is giving it more depth. So I feel like when I have a conversation with my coachee, or if this ever comes back again, I feel much more equipped with how I should approach it because of the perspectives that we talked today. So just grateful for that.
So I will clean this up, and what I've done is created a format for this is scribing, and then we'll share it with the group. So we have a Telegram group. If you're not already in it, I can't remember if you are.
I am.
Okay, we will post it in the Telegram group.
Yeah.
The official Telegram group. Okay, cool. And for those of you who are not already on Telegram group and want to be on it, just let me know. Drop me a message on meetup.com, and I'll send you the link, and we can get there. Okay. So thanks, Emily, and okay, who else? Mel, Melissa, your biggest takeaway.
My biggest takeaway would be what Emily shared regarding how to find an ikigai, which is to scroll back at your photos, your memories, to see what features the most. Yeah, so I did a quick scroll, and I realized it had a lot of socializing pictures and theater pictures. So I wonder what to make of it. Yeah, just that was my takeaway.
Interesting. So that'll be a great starting point. And Mel, sorry, I didn't realize that you posed a question in the chat, right? You asked about how to differentiate between
between being guided by your values. I think what Murphy shared, right? To find an ikigai is to be guided by your values and what you detest, what are your passions.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, like, how would you differentiate how would you distinguish between being guided by your internal values or being um or or whether it is an unresolved trauma that you have. Like, for example, if you don't like public speaking, um does it necessarily mean that you should steer away from a career which involves public speaking, or could it just be your like an unresolved trauma? Maybe as a young kid, when you tried to speak up in your family, you were put down by your parents. I mean, just giving hypothetical examples. Yeah. So how would we differentiate between a trauma and a value?
And
Yeah.
I would love to have Ethan weigh in on this next time he's with us, because he has this entire concept called values and anti-values, right? And his trauma is like his favorite topic. So
let's have that as a topic next session.
Okay, let me ask Ethan.
Yeah, let's do that.
So see how that goes. So Ethan loves
it's his talk show.
and he loves the topic of trauma. And he talks about, a lot of times when we talk about values, the person doesn't really have a value, they have an anti-value. So for example, a person may not be for honesty, the person is just anti-lying.
Okay,
right?
cool.
So
Yeah.
I can't remember whether we did a session on that already. We probably did talk about anti-values in one of our previous sessions, but with enough interest, we can get Ethan to talk about it again. I love the topic because a lot of times we get very frustrated. People don't really like promote the value of like honesty. They just hate it when people lie to them. They cannot lie to me, but then they are sometimes not honest either, right? They just hate lying. So it's different. Then from there you discover, okay, how do I move from anti-value to a value? I don't have the same depth as the way Ethan would share it, because that's his baby, right? The whole anti-value thing, I've only heard from him. I've not heard of anyone else talk about it. So I'll try to get Ethan to share a little bit more about that again, and see if we can do that.
Okay.
Faith.
I think for myself, I think this is a timely discussion because I'm considering to do a career switch, or at least move away from my current industry towards VWO, social work, that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of consideration in terms of salary because I was IT and I wanted to go into admin. So I mean, so this whole thing helped me to really think about, what are the things that I'm willing to do while getting a pay cut to help me really see what I should go for, or just go to the different field but staying in the same role. Yeah, so this helped me to have more clarity on, in a sense, what do I stand for, what do I really want to aim when I job hop, rather than just doing for the sake of doing it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Faith. Jaffer, your takeaway?
Oh yeah, I think I have two key takeaways. One came from, I think, Emily. I think it was around the distinction between what actually is a passion, right? And is it a hobby, or is it just something that you feel at the spur of the moment? But I thought that I settled the answer like what has been consistent with your life, right? I think that really brings about a lot more clarity. The other takeaway came from Murphy, but because it reminded me of a teacher who talked about this point about getting good at getting good. It's also about the point whereby you get in the game, but most of the people give up before they get good enough. So I thought that point really struck a chord because it reminds me of a story. I think somebody shared like it's a father and a son, right? So a son came home, played a baseball game and said he sucked at it, right? So then the father was sitting there, and then the wife saw the son and said, "Hey, you are the coach. You should go and coach your son." So the father said, "Oh, since I'm a coach, I should coach my son." And then he asked, "What's up, son?" Then the son said, "Oh, I really suck at baseball. Played one round and I couldn't hit it, right? And then the father said, you know what, you kind of suck. But then he said that it's because that you did not have enough practice yet. So what he get his son to do is, you're not allowed to have an opinion until we had about 1,000 swings. So he and his son played for 1,000 swings, and eventually, after about 1,000 swings, the son like got quite consistently not too bad at it, and now he's allowed to have an opinion at it. Yeah, so I thought that also resonate a lot. Like, it's sometimes when we move into new places, a new place where uncertain, focus on getting good, so you can create value for others, and then the rest will take care of itself lah, if you're good. Yeah, so that struck me as a takeaway. I don't know why it became so deep, but never mind, it's just my way of processing.
Yeah, because you have intellection as your top 5, my friend.
Yes.
So he thinks deep.
Yes, that's what I thought too.
Okay, so for those of you who have been around for a while, if you've not taken your Clifton Strengths profile, please go and take it. A lot of times, we find that the way that we communicate and the way that we process can be seen in our top 5 or top 10. And so Jeffers, because he has input and he has intellection, he collects a lot of information, he goes really, really deep. And when he talks, right, it's like, wow, so chim. So that's intellection for us. For me, I really love the reminder of knowing the worth of your passion, right? And I think it was a good reminder. Sometimes I just tell myself, I'm good at this, nobody's going to pay me. And I had many people in my life who came up to me and said, Alex, you should charge for it. Alex, you're doing a good job. You should do this. You should ask for people. You should stop doing it for free. You know, a lot of people coming and tell me, is this sustainable? How are you going to do it in the long term if you keep doing this? I was like, okay, I get it. So it takes time to get from here to here, right? We hear it and then we need to receive it for ourselves. And to me, I think that's a great reminder of really having that faith and also growing in that belief in ourselves and what our passions are. Okay, so thanks everyone. I know we have overrun by 10 minutes. I really enjoyed today's conversation with everyone and the input that everyone was generating. I hope to see you in our next session. Again, if there's anything that you need connection to how to get on Telegram group and things like this, just drop me a message. I'd love to hear from all of you in the community. Right? Thank you so much. I will see you all in 2 weeks' time, and we'll see if we can get that session on trauma and anti-values with Ethan.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye.